For the past 6 months, I've been testing and reviewing desk gadgets that are supposed to make me more productive or even boost my creativity. I've tested devices with programmable keys, devices with rotating knobs, even devices with tiny programmable screens. Every device I've tested was great at some stuff, but bad at other stuff. But I recently came across a product that seems to have all of the hardware features that I want in a single device. This is the LoupeDeck Live S, and it checks all of the boxes that I look for in a productivity gadget. It has clickable buttons, rotating knobs, and a mini display for programming shortcuts and macros. The device is targeted at live streamers and content creators like myself, but really, it could be used with any program to boost your productivity and creative output. But can the LoupeDeck actually deliver on that promise? And can the right tool actually boost your creativity? Let's get into it. Let's start with the hardware. If you ask me, the hardware features are the single most important part of any productivity gadget like this. How you touch and interact with these devices can make or break the experience. The comparison I like to make is to the original iPod. Back in the day, you could use an iPod for about 2 minutes, and then everything made sense. And because it was so effortless to use, it became a part of everyday life for anyone who owned one. The LoupeDeck may not reach iPod levels of simplicity, but after using one for about 10 minutes, it became very easy to understand. On the left, we have 2 knobs, and they have a clicky response as they rotate, and as a result, they feel precise. In the center, there is a grid of tiny touchscreens, and no, these are not buttons like you'd get on an Elgato Stream Deck. This is simply a grid of small touchscreens, and using them is similar to typing on your smartphone. As you tap the screens, you'll get a little haptic feedback, telling your brain that you've made contact with the touchscreen. Finally, there are 4 clicky circular buttons, which are used to cycle through different pages of shortcuts. You can also assign colors to these buttons, which is helpful for labeling different pages. For example, I have a page dedicated to Spotify, and so I've set the color of that button to green to match the Spotify logo. Another feature that I really like about the LoupeDeck Live S is that the entire interface can be rotated 90 or 180 degrees, so you can place this thing anywhere on your desk. After some testing, I was surprised to find that I preferred the LoupeDeck in this vertical orientation, laying flat on my desk on the left side of my keyboard. This flexibility to go anywhere on the desk is something that most productivity gadgets just can't do. So overall, the physical controls on the LoupeDeck are excellent, making the device easy to use. What's not so excellent, however, is the fit and finish on this device. If ease of use is the most important part of a productivity gadget, a close second would be the build quality. What I mean is, I like a productivity gadget that feels good to the touch. When you interact with a device, it should inspire confidence, and that is unfortunately not the reaction I had to the LoupeDeck. The construction is entirely plastic, which I know is the standard for these shortcut devices, but it also makes the device feel a bit cheap to the touch. More importantly, an all-plastic enclosure makes this thing pretty lightweight, and it has just 4 tiny rubber feet. And in my testing, I found that the LoupeDeck would slide around on my desk during regular usage. Next, we should talk about the software experience. After testing quite a few of these productivity gadgets, I've learned that the software can make or break the device. As for the software experience with the LoupeDeck, well, like the hardware, it's good, but with some drawbacks. There are some really strong aspects to the software, like the interface for setting up shortcuts. It's easy to use, and in less than an hour, I understood where everything was, and I was able to build a few basic pages of shortcuts and tools on my LoupeDeck. There's also an incredible feature called Dynamic Mode, where the LoupeDeck detects when you open a program, say like Photoshop, and it loads up a pre-built set of shortcuts and tools for Photoshop. Then once you close the program, it goes back to your default profile. Dynamic Mode is probably my single favorite aspect of this device. Automatically changing profiles allows me to focus on my work and not micromanaging my macropad. But it's not all perfect. See, these pre-built profiles I'm using are great if you use programs that are supported right out of the box. But if your program isn't on the list, you will have to build everything yourself, and that takes time. Now, there is a marketplace where you can download community-made profiles, icon packs, and more, but as of posting this video, the marketplace is very thin on content. Unlike, say, Elgato, where there's tons and tons of community-made tools, the LoupeDeck marketplace feels empty, which forces you to build essentially everything yourself. Now, hopefully this improves over time as more people pick these devices up and share their tools and profiles, but it's something you need to know before buying one. So we've discussed the hardware and the software. But how exactly do I use this thing? Well, let's break down some use cases. So my default use case for the LoupeDeck is what I like to call a desk companion. I have a set of icons that launch my most used applications, which may seem extra, but hey, I have an OLED monitor and my taskbar is hidden at all times because I am afraid of burn-in. I color matched all of the application shortcuts to match my keyboard and mouse for aesthetic purposes. Below the app icons are a few tools which I find useful day in and day out. First, there's a basic play and pause button. Then there's the eyedropper, which allows me to instantly sample any color on screen and save for later. There's also a folder which has all of my currently open apps. I've also got a simple stopwatch here, which I like to use as a Pomodoro timer, which is good for getting tasks done. And finally, I have a simple date and calendar tool, which launches my Google Calendar down here on the right. As I mentioned earlier, if I click this green button, it brings me to my Spotify page, which has some music controls, a way to like and shuffle songs, as well as some shortcuts to my favorite playlists. This is what my LoupeDeck looks like 90% of the time when I'm just at my desk. But of course, this thing can do so much more. Which brings me to my second use case, which is editing in Photoshop. Thanks to dynamic mode, Photoshop tools appear on the LoupeDeck whenever I open the program. I don't use Photoshop every day, and as a result, I don't exactly have every keyboard shortcut memorized. So I find it handy to have all of the tools visible on a screen near my fingertips. When you click the circle buttons, you will reach other pages full of additional functions for Photoshop. For example, there's a page dedicated to color controls. But for me, the best part of using the LoupeDeck with Photoshop are the knobs. The knobs can be used to adjust the size and opacity of your brush, or pan and zoom on the canvas, or even navigate through layers. My next use case is, of course, video editing in Adobe Premiere. Much like Photoshop, we have pages full of tools and functions. For example, there's a shortcut page just for audio editing. You can mute tracks and adjust volumes as well as trim clips. And as you may have guessed, I really like having tactile controls when I edit video, which brings me once again to the knobs. These knobs can be used to scroll through the timeline in Premiere or trim clips and once again adjust volume levels. So let's wrap this video up with the age-old question. Is it worth it? The LoupeDeck Live S is currently priced at $189 US, which may seem pricey, but this is in fact the cheapest device that LoupeDeck makes. As for competition, well, it's more expensive than the Stream Deck Mini, but is slightly less expensive than the new Stream Deck Plus. When I take a step back and really try to evaluate this product, I'd say the LoupeDeck has excellent hardware controls with its knobs, buttons, and touch interface, but has an average or even cheap feeling build quality. The software is solid and the possibilities are of course endless, but it requires some serious time and effort to set up, especially if the programs that you use aren't supported right out of the box. So if you ask me the question, would I recommend the LoupeDeck Live S to anyone who's looking to get started with productivity gadgets? No. If you're completely new to this, I would recommend getting something cheaper like a Stream Deck Mini to see if you would actually benefit from using a device like this. However, if you're an experienced photo or video editor and you're interested in adding some physical control into your workflow, the LoupeDeck Live S could be an excellent addition to your desk setup. It may not be for everyone, but I'm happy to see more productivity gadgets like this one hit the market. Ultimately, it gives us all more options, and that is a win-win.